Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Louisa. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and if you're coming back, welcome back. So if you haven't been here before, I am a Christian. I'm also a practicing mental health clinician, and I'm currently doing postgraduate psychology. So most of my content is focused on the crossover between psychology and theology. And I find it really fascinating to also examine popular culture and to see how popular culture reflects, mental states and also spiritual truths. For those of you that don't know me, I have been a metalhead for quite some time, probably decades to be honest, because I think I started getting into it in high school. But Disturbed is one of those bands that has been around for apparently now 25 years. They're doing their 25th anniversary tour of The Sickness, which is probably their biggest hit. And I kind of was introduced to them a little bit later, probably around 2010. So I've heard their music for a while, but I don't necessarily listen to it a lot these days. But I did actually listen to a couple of their albums more recently, and I was like, they have some really interesting lyrics. And a lot of people seem to lump metal music into the category of dark or satanic or devil worship and things like that, which is just absurd because there's so many different bands and so many different Christian metal artists out there who make this music because it expresses a certain emotion. And according to psychology, metal music is actually quite good for you psychologically. It can help with processing anger. It can help with becoming more emotionally stable by allowing you to sort of explore these darker tendencies that we all have as human beings. So interestingly, a lot of psychology studies find that people who listen to metal music are actually better adjusted and more emotionally stable than other people. If you're not familiar with the band Disturbed, they are an interesting sort of case study in the metal world because the frontman, the singer, David Draymond, he is Jewish. He speaks a lot in his music about religious themes and spiritual themes and sort of psychological wranglings that, he's been through. And part of what they do as a band is to reach out to people who are struggling. It's almost like they actually have a ministry. So they, as a band, seek out disaffected youth who are, struggling with substance use issues, struggling with psychological issues, and they try to help them. So it's really interesting to sort of go back and listen to music that I listened to as a non-Christian and sort of listen to it through the lens of a Christian worldview, because there's some interesting themes that pop up. In particular, there's a song called The Vengeful One. So we're going to have a look at the video clip for that and sort of explore the themes that it is exploring. He watches from the ageless void, enlightened shadow of his former self. Interesting. To avenge the victims of the war machine and vanquish the evil. He is the hand of God. The Dark Messiah. So in case you didn't know, it's called The Vengeful One.
It's us in the chaos, taking in the lack of raw humanity. It says in the entire world falling in love with their
Okay, so interesting so far. You might have noticed some of the lyrics as we've been going, and I think this reflects a lot of people's journey through, I guess, finding the light, and we will have a look at that in a little while because there's another song that I think is really interesting. So just in case the lyrics were a bit hard to follow because that's music, the lines that we heard first was, "He is observing the chaos, taking in the lack of raw humanity. It's as if the entire world's fallen in love with their insanity." And that would probably be a really accurate description of what happened to me when I became Christian. It was like watching the world lose its collective mind and just sort of sitting back and going, what is going on? This is nuts.
Hear the innocent voices scream as the tormentors laugh through marvelous. No forgiveness for all I've seen, the degradation I cannot forget. So sleep soundly in your beds tonight. Judgment falls upon you at first light.
So there's a real theme of, like in the film clip at least, of the media sort of brainwashing people and influencing how they view the world and how they interact with the world. I think that plays a part, but I don't know if it's like necessarily to blame for human behavior. We do have choices. We do have, the ability to switch off from these things and to be more discerning about the content that we consume. And I think more people need to take up the cause of critical thinking. Anyway, I'll just read out the lyrics. Hear the innocent voices scream as their tormentors laugh through all of it. No forgiveness from all I've seen, the degradation I cannot forget. So sleep soundly in your beds tonight, for judgment falls upon you at first light. Yeah, so this is kind of describing very sadistic, psychopathic sort of interactions between different people. Tormentors enjoy seeing people's pain, and there's no forgiveness in their hearts whatsoever. And perhaps he's also talking about, the protagonist of this story who is observing the chaos is not able to forgive or forget all of this degradation. And certainly the next line, which I guess is probably like the bridge in the song, is all about, hey guys, sleep soundly, because you're all gonna die. And then it talks about judgment coming at first light. So let's have a look at the chorus. Okay, so the chorus says, I'm the hand of God, I'm the dark Messiah, I'm the vengeful one. Look inside and see what you're becoming. In the blackest moment of a dying world, what have you become? Look inside and see what you're becoming. And so the image that we saw at the end of that was like these people essentially full of worms. And I guess full of maggots or something. So the chorus obviously stands out a lot as someone who is a Christian. The hand of God is literally, the Messiah. The Messiah sits at the right hand of God and essentially performs the function of judgment when it comes to Judgment Day. Now, the song calls this character that they're talking about the Dark Messiah. But there's no such thing, really, not in Christianity, and not even in Judaism. The Messiah is essentially God himself coming in a more human form. And so the first visitation of the Messiah was in the form of the person of Jesus. He died, he rose from the dead, and he promised all of his followers that he would return. Because according to the Jewish Bible, the Old Testament, there were a number of prophecies about the Messiah that were not fulfilled through the first coming of Jesus. And that's like the majority of the prophecies about the Messiah. So only maybe a third of the prophecies were actually fulfilled the first time around, and the last 2/3 are supposed to be fulfilled at the second coming, which is why Christianity is supposed to be all about the return of the Lord. As Christians, we are supposed to be eagerly waiting the return of the Messiah. And it says in the Bible that in him there is no darkness, only light. So he's not dark, but he is terrifying. So there's a number of Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah coming to essentially obliterate all of the evil in the world and to get rid of the people who are oppressing and victimizing people who are true to God. But in the book of Revelation, we see a more condensed version of all of these prophecies kind of collated into the one book. And it explicitly says who the Messiah is. So in chapter 19 of the book of Revelation, starting at verse 11, it says, "Now I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. And he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no one knew except himself. He was clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Now out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should strike the nations, and he himself will rule them with a rod of iron. He himself treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he has on his robe and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." So this is a picture of the second coming of Christ, and it has him in this very frightful appearance. His robe is dipped in blood, and he treads the winepress of the wrath of God. Now, if you want to know what that means, we just go back a little further in Revelation to see that passage. So in chapter 14 of Revelation, beginning at verse 14, it says, "Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man." So that's a reference to the prophecy of Daniel, where Daniel said that the Messiah would be like the Son of Man. And Jesus, throughout his entire ministry, referred to himself as the Son of Man. So it's sort of like a shorthand way of saying it's Jesus. "Having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped." So a lot of people interpret this part of the chapter as reaping the faithful. So the faithful are taken before the rest of it happens, because what happens afterwards is extremely gory. So from verse 17 it says, "Then another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar who had power over fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles for 1,600 furlongs. So this is a picture of God literally crushing people until their blood pours out. So for some people, they might see that as like, a dark Messiah, because it's pretty grim. But this is all to do with justice. This is all to do with the justice and the mercy of God. So he is merciful to the people who have been oppressed by getting rid of their oppressors, and he performs the function of justice by giving people what they deserve.
It's a violent urges and the teeming masses have been terrorized. The human predators all gone mad, are reaping profits born from their demise. The rabid media plays their role, stoking the flames of war to no surprise. Only too eager to sell their souls from the apocalypse must be televised.
Okay, so the lyrics for that particular verse are, as the violence surges and the teeming masses have been terrorized, the human predators all gone mad are reaping profits born from their demise. The rabid media plays their roles, stoking the flames of war to no surprise. Only too eager to sell their souls for the apocalypse must be televised. I think this is a pretty accurate description of how the world works these days. I mean, in the age of mass media, that's kind of how it is. And in terms of individual people, no one really cares about the masses. They're just cannon fodder in so many of these machinations. But in certain situations, they enthusiastically take part. They think that this is the way things should be. And so I don't know if you can necessarily say that there's a bunch of people who are completely innocent.
So sleep soundly in your beds tonight. Judgment falls.
They're all robots. Not really sure how much of this I can really show on YouTube. But let's just say that the vengeful one is now reaping.
When you die, you know why. For you cannot be saved when all the world is slave. When you die, you know why. You die, you know why. For you cannot be saved. This world is to the grave. When you die, you know why. I'm the hand of a God. I'm the dark Messiah. I'm the vengeful one.
So he's literally fighting Satan now. Makes sense.
This moment of a dying world. What have you become? I'm the dark Messiah. I'm the vengeful one. In the blackest moments of a dying world. What have you
Now he's destroying the media machine. And I guess liberating people? the bit there where he's like, you know, obliterating people. It says, when you die, you'll know why, for you cannot be saved with all the world enslaved. When you die, you'll know why. You'll die, you'll know why, for you cannot be saved, this world is too depraved. When you die, you'll know why. And I think that's also pretty accurate. I mean, the whole prophecy, the whole point of the book of Revelation is that the world gets to a point where it's so messed up that it can't be saved anymore, and essentially God just has to pull out the people who can be saved and then do away with everyone else. He's given us the free will to make these choices for ourselves, and he's given us a free invitation through Jesus to be redeemed. And, you know, if people take up the free invitation, then great, you will be redeemed. If people choose to just do things their own way and decide to, you know, define good and evil for themselves, then that's where the world ends up. Now, some people might think that it's as black and white as all Christians will be saved and all non-Christians won't be saved. But that's not exactly as clear-cut in the Bible, because there's certainly plenty of examples of people who were, you know, sinners who God redeems because they have essentially, you know, a heart for justice and for righteousness. And then there are people who claim to be faithful and who are the least faithful. So in Matthew 24, that's a particular verse of the Bible where Jesus is talking about the end times and when he's going to come back, what it's going to look like, who is going to be acceptable and who is unacceptable. And there's a lot of examples of people who thought that they were in and then find out that they're not. And so pretty much at the end of Matthew 24, from verse 45, it says, "Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, 'My master is delayed a long time,' and he then begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So this is an explicit warning for servants of Jesus. You know, theoretically ministers who are supposed to be feeding the sheep, because that's one of the commands that Jesus gave to the apostles, was to feed my sheep and tend the flock and things like that. So what we see instead are a lot of church leaders feeding themselves and stealing all of the money that belongs to the community of God and using it for luxurious lifestyles and selfish gain. So, you know, eating and drinking with the drunkards. So, like, exploiting the flock and beating other ministers and basically saying, you know, I can do whatever I want because he's not coming back. But he is coming back. Yeah, so just so you know, this is the guy you heard outside before. This is Ghost. So Jesus is pretty clear throughout the Bible that not everyone who calls themselves a Christian is going to make it. And I think there's an interesting video that we should have a look at, which is the front singer of Disturbed addressing a concert audience. So we're just going to have a quick look at that.
Now, I think it's funny And I can't help but mention it. I'm probably going to get in a little bit of trouble for this, and I know everybody backstage is going, oh my God, what is he going to say? But it was brought to my attention that a contingent from the Westboro Baptist Church came here to protest the show tonight.
I think it's worth noting that the Westboro Baptist Church is not a Christian church. It is a cult, and pretty nuts one at that. So just to put that into some context.
Because they think this is just devil music.
They don't really know.
Absolute load of unbelievably stinking, festering horse shit that is. Let me ask you something. Do you see any sin up here? What could possibly be bad about setting people free every single night?
So I don't really know like the full context of what went on before this, but it sort of becomes apparent as you're watching this particular video excerpt that the two guys sitting down are like members of the audience or something like that, and they've been brought onto stage to kind of minister to them in many respects, because they are struggling with various different things. And so when he says, you know, setting people free every night, he's literally talking about like trying to reach people who are in a dark place.
You know what's a sin? Vanity is a sin, motherfuckers. And for them to be so vain as to look down from their high horse and look at all of us and tell us that we're doing something wrong, who's the sinner?
Okay, so the word vanity actually has a couple of meanings in at least the King James English Bible. So the use of language has obviously evolved over time, and the English language has changed over the last 400 years. And so we often understand vanity to mean just being concerned with our appearances, trying to, you know, look better and that sort of thing. That's certainly part of it. But the original sort of King James English version of the word vanity meant futile. You know, a vain attempt to do something is a futile attempt. And that's why in the, you know, 10 Commandments in the book of Exodus, when it says, do not take the Lord's name in vain, it's not talking about swearing. It's actually talking about don't tell people that you are a child of God if you're just going to do really dumb stuff. Taking someone's name is the same language that we use with, you know, marriage. So I took my husband's name when we got married, and that means that I become a representative of his family and of his name. And so people get to know him by knowing me. And if I'm a piece of crap, then they think that he is a piece of crap. And so what David Draymond is saying here is actually sort of more complex than even he realizes, because it's talking about so many deeper things theologically and spiritually than a lot of people realize. You know, taking on God's name, saying I am a Christian and therefore I represent God, and what you see from me is what you can expect from God. that has very serious implications, and a lot of people who call themselves Christian don't realize that. They don't realize how they are representing God to people who don't yet know God. So he is 100% correct that that is a very grave sin indeed.
What's the worst thing you're going to experience at a Disturbed show? A little bit of profanity. Will profanity kill you? No, but the darkness can, and it is our job to dispel the darkness.
So he's saying that, like, you know, the worst thing that you can expect at a show tonight is profanity. And certainly it is said in the Bible that Christians shouldn't swear or like use profanity and that sort of thing. But the thing is, like, I don't think it's, in the grand scheme of things, one of the more serious issues. As someone who works in mental health, you know, I counsel people on a regular basis, and I want them to be as open and expressive as possible. And so I'm not there to censor them. I'm there to helpfully facilitate them to talk about really difficult things. And so sometimes swearing is involved, and I am okay with that. Why? Because we have way more important things to talk about. It's interesting what he's saying about, you know, their job being to dispel the darkness. So as I said before, like, he kind of sees this as almost a ministry. And I think in a lot of ways he is ministering to people.
Case and point. This side. You know, I have a soft spot for this gentleman, not only because of what he's gone through, but because we've all gone through it ourselves. And Gabriel, I have a secret for you. Sometimes darkness can show you the light.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, he was actually quoting one of his own songs at that point, Darkness Can Show You the Light. So we're going to have a look at the lyrics of that one and sort of unpack it a little bit, because I think that's a very interesting phenomenon that happens to a lot of people, where, you know, actually seeing evil like play out can really, you know, force you to confront a lot of very deep issues and really big questions. I have a whole video on like the problem of evil and how we can kind of think about it in a way that helps us to deal with it. But yeah, that's one of the things that I certainly found personally. And there was this old preacher back in like the 80s or 90s or something called Derek Prince. And he used to say that, you know, there's a lot of people in churches, and I think there's a lot of people in the world in general that like to sit on fences. You know, all of us have this tendency to think, oh, well, you know, I can't judge. Who am I to judge? You know, each to their own. Maybe this guy just really likes little kids a lot. And what Derek used to say was the Holy Spirit has a way of electrifying the fence. And I have definitely found that to be true, because he will not let you sit on a fence. He will not let you straddle this ambiguous line between, oh, maybe evil's okay. Who am I to judge? Maybe evil is fine. Maybe we should just let people be evil. Like, no, God is going to make you decide. And if that means that you have to see the darkness fully for yourself, to understand exactly how destructive it is, how terrible it is, the devastating impact that it has, then he will let you see it. So yeah, there's a song by Disturbed called The Light. And the lyrics are this. Like an unsung melody, the truth is waiting there for you to find it. It's not a blight, but a remedy, a clear reminder of how it began deep inside your memory, turned away as you struggled to find it. You heard the call as you walked away, a voice of calm from within the silence. And for what seemed an eternity, you're waiting, hoping it would call out again. You heard the shadow reckoning. Then your fears seemed to keep you blinded. You held your guard as you walked away. And the chorus is, when you think all is forsaken, listen to me now, all is not forsaken. You need never feel broken again. Sometimes darkness can show you the light. And then the next verse is, an unforgivable tragedy. The answer isn't where you think you'd find it. Prepare yourself for the reckoning, for when your world seems to crumble again. Don't be afraid, don't turn away. You're the one who can redefine it. Don't let hope become a memory. Let the shadow permeate your mind and reveal the thoughts that were tucked away, so that the door can be opened again. Within your darkest memories lies the answer if you dare to find it. Don't let hope become a memory. When you think all is forsaken, listen to me now, all is not forsaken. You need never feel broken again. Sometimes darkness can show you the light. I think that's a really good message. You know, we have all times in our lives which are incredibly difficult to get through. And sometimes those moments can really show us, like, you know, what we don't want to be. Sometimes we need to know what we don't want to become in order to decide what we do want to become. And hopefully that that person is more like Jesus than anything else. So yeah, unfortunately there are a lot of dumb Christian cults out there that like to very loudly talk on behalf of everyone else, and I just wish they would shut up and go away, because they obviously don't know what they're talking about. They obviously haven't actually looked into what it is that they're attempting to criticize. They think they know because they just look at like superficial examples and judge it very, very quickly. And I mean, I've talked about judgment on this channel a number of times, and like how to judge properly. And it usually requires a lot of self-examination first and foremost. Like, you need to know your own crap before you can really call out anyone on their own. Jesus's example is, you know, how can you see the brother's speck in his eye if you've got a giant plank sticking out of your own? And that's the whole point, is like, you need to assess your own blind spots. And then perhaps you can help someone else to see what their blind spots are, but maybe not. Maybe, you know, it's none of your business. Anyway, that is my 2 cents worth as a metalhead Christian. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of metal music? Are you a fan? Not a fan? I don't think it's like necessarily the genre for everyone. Not everyone is interested in like loud, heavy beats and that sort of thing. I am, but that's just me. But yeah, if you're into other kinds of secular music that you find really thought-provoking and interesting, share it in the comments. Let everyone else know, and then we can check it out. And if you know any interesting Christian bands, let people know in the comments as well. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Take care. God bless, and I'll see you next time. Bye.